Good afternoon, my friends. I would like to give you a couple of my number one tips for brain rewiring if you are using a self-directed neuroplastic approach to rewiring your brain and recovering from chronic illness. I've been coaching for 5.5 years and started my journey of recovery 8 years ago. This is not comprehensive at all, but because this is the work I do every single day, these are a couple of the tips that I tend to give people a lot, or are just really key, easy things to implement, or maybe not easy, but simple things to implement. A couple of these are practical, and a couple of them are more on a deeper level, but these are just really a couple of foundational pieces to any successful practice, no matter what program you're using or what you're recovering from. Number one is stop naming your symptoms. This one, I will admit, drives me a little nuts because it's really basic. It's really simple. It's really easy compared to a lot of the other practices that we have to do in order to rewire our brains. If we are naming our symptoms, we are still identifying with them, and we are still carrying the very heavy stories that are very, very limbically charged and negatively charged that come with the names of our symptoms. I can tell you, you will not recover fully unless you stop naming your symptoms. Guaranteed. And again, does not take very much effort, but I tell this to people a lot, and I feel like it just goes in on ear and out the other. And I see so many people just repeatedly struggle because they're still naming their separate symptoms and seeing them as meaning different things or being tied to different triggers, and they're not, but they just stay in these good crosswired trauma loops because we're still naming symptoms. So please do yourself a favor and just stop naming your symptoms. Cold turkey it. If you need to, stop it for a week and see where you're at differently in terms of your brain state and how you're seeing what you're doing and how you're seeing yourself and how you're understanding what's happening inside of your brain. Just give it a week and see how things look differently inside your brain when you do this, because part of it is the words that come out of our mouth show us what we subconsciously believe on the deepest level. And when we are, and that's a guarantee. Like if it's coming out of your mouth, you believe it on an embodied level, even if you don't believe it anymore in your prefrontal cortex. If you've been acting greater than you feel and consciously changing your beliefs, then you might be, you're putting on that new belief, putting it on like a hat over and over again. But if you're still thinking, even if it's only in coaching that you name these symptoms, that means that on the deepest level, that's how you're seeing it, that's how you're believing it. And when you feel safe enough to express it that way, that's still the reality you're living inside of. So that's another just tip in general. If you want to know what you really believe or how much you've really rewired something, notice how you speak to yourself in the privacy of your own mind or in your safest relationships, because that's going to show you what you really believe and how you're really relating to everything in your life. It's an incredible self-reflection tool. So that's the first one. The second one, start your day off with minimally 15 to 30 minutes of some sort of brain rewiring practice. If you're doing a program that has visualization, and if visualization is something that you're finding to be a constructive tool for you, that's the best one to start off with. Part of this is that at the beginning of the day, we start off with all the old pathways running. And generally, whatever brain state we start the day out in is the easiest one to return to. But also, when we start out with visualization, there's a visualization in particular really puts us in, it really exercises our prefrontal cortex and executive function and puts us in this position of being the one in charge of literally creating our own experience, which is the most powerful position you could be in. When you start the day out like that, not only are you shifting your chemical state, you're getting into this really powerful position, you're then starting your day, it's a lot easier to come back to that throughout the day, and you're starting your whole day from this place of prefrontal, function and being in touch with the reality of the fact that the rest of the day you're going to be up against this hologram of the reality your limbic system is projecting from being impaired and being in chronic fight, flight, freeze, and you'll have some level of contrast to be able to recognize those false messages when they pop up. But if we wake up and we're already in the hologram, we're already in this limbically hijacked, amygdala overactivated, freeze, fear, fight, flight based state, we're not really even questioning it off the bat. It's much harder to pull yourself out of that once those pathways have had the chance to really kind of sink in their teeth and get going. It's much more difficult to get out of that later than earlier. And if visualization isn't your thing, whatever, maybe it's somatics, maybe it's singing or dancing, maybe it's doing a guided meditation. I do encourage, again, something that is truly self-directed at the beginning of the day for that personal power, prefrontal executive bit. But anything's better than nothing. Start your day off with practice. The third one is a bit more of a deep thing, but this one is so big. Identify with your spirit, not your body. Regardless of your spiritual beliefs, scientifically, every 7 years, we have a complete turnover of our cell regeneration, meaning that your body is literally made out of different matter entirely every 7 years. And also, like, think about it, from the time you were, forming in your mother's womb to when you were born to when you were 8 and 18 and 28 and however old you are now, your body has been incredibly different. The way it looks is different. The way it feels is different. Like, everything is different. And when it's so easy for people to identify with their illness and with their symptoms and with feelings of limitation, or even the brain patterns. Perhaps it's not even like physical symptoms, but maybe it's beliefs or mental states, brain states that you've been in, feelings about yourself or life that you've been in for a long time. When we're seeing that as our reality and seeing that as the realist thing, and that's the truth, this is the reality of who I am and where my body's at and what I'm dealing with, we see that as more true. We're just continuing to perpetuate this story, and we're creating new cells from a place of illness. Literally, we're like actively perpetuating our illness. And I know Joe Dispenza talks about this and a number of other, people who work in this kind of field. But when you start to identify as the thing that is both animating and actively generating your physical body, your spirit, which is formless, divine, has the wholeness of health, all perfection within it, you can start to create from that place of divine wholeness and health. And you can create a whole new body. And it might take a few years before you really see a very different, completely different body. But the sooner you start, the sooner you're going to see that. And if you're continuing to live in that old illness identity, you're guaranteed to be continuing to create an ill body. So identify with your spirit, not your body. And then this is the last one, because a common question I get is, reassure me that this is going to get better. Will this get better? Will this get better? If you do the work, yes, it will. But 2/3 of this process is just your effort. You will get as much health as you are willing to pay for with the courage you have to believe new things that are life-giving, and the courage and persistence and strength you're willing to exhibit in putting those new beliefs into action. Just doing the work, showing up every day, learning the basics of brain science, learning how to interrupt those old pathways, creating new ones, being disciplined, recognizing that this is not rocket science. Brain science is complicated. You do need to spend time investing and understanding how it works, but you're going to get as much as you pay for, as much health, as much happiness, as much fullness of life as you're willing to put in effort for. That's the bottom line, regardless of everything else. That's the bottom line equation. So do the work. Love you guys.